As you know, my friends, we are in Seaford Cemetery, where many years from the First World War, 1949, 1940, where many Caribbeans, people from the West Indies, volunteered to serve in World War I. They gave their lives in different theaters of operation, and in doing so, unfortunately, some had to live, some died, and some survived and returned to the West Indies. Having returned to the West Indies, they joined the community as a whole, but unfortunately they gave their lives, and still we had a Second World War. And we are the members, we are personnel from the Second World War. And today we are here to pay honor, respect and dignity to those of our brothers and sisters who died in the service of the nation. And to this end, may God bless all those who died, and may we live as long as possible to give fair respect to our comrades. I thank you.
And now I'm going to ask Flying Officer Ulric Cross to speak for West Indians in the services. Ulric is a navigator in one of our own bomber squadrons.
Well, it's a job to know where to start. There are so many of us doing so many different things. In the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, in Air Sea Rescue and the Marines. In the RENs, the ATS, the WAF, and the nursing services. If I could navigate you on a magic carpet, we'd find West Indians at their stations all over the country, and in lots of other places which I'm not allowed to mention.
The Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, Her Excellency Glenda Maureen Phillips, the other distinguished ambassadors, Justice Missouri, the distinguished honorees, distinguished guests, friends, should I say Romans, countrymen. Now this is obviously a very auspicious occasion. Perhaps for the first time, Caribbean nationals in the diaspora have assembled under one roof to recognize the tremendous contribution of ex-servicemen who gave so much with so little expectation of reward for the cause of freedom. Sir Winston Churchill once said that he was not fearful of the censure of history, since he would be the one writing about it. It is a candid admission that historians invariably record events through lens of myopia and personal bias. It is something which our ex-servicemen are painfully aware of, given that their contributions to the war effort have largely been ignored. Where it is mentioned at all, it is all too often nothing more than a mere footnote in the chronicle of historical events. We are perceived as passive observers, spectators to the unending drama of important events. Gabriel and I undertook this project of writing a book about some of our ex-servicemen. We thought it was extremely imperative to document the contributions of our folk. It was motivated by what Dr. Martin Luther King and more recently President Barack Obama has referred to as the fierce urgency of now. We are at a historical juncture where we must celebrate the tradition of excellence and achievement of our nationals. We must do so to provide some hope and indeed guidance to our young people, many of whom have been debilitated by gang affiliations, drug use, and its attendant vices. The likes of Justice Cross, former Attorney General Dudley Thompson, I should say Rhodes Scholar Dudley Thompson, it's important. Former Prime Minister Errol Barrow, his deceased, Cy Grant, Edward Scobie, the historian, and indeed the Buffalo Soldiers and the Tuskegee Airmen. They all challenged the preconceptions of inferiority, and through their successes, they bored holes not in the proverbial glass ceiling, but in an iron curtain which stymied the efforts of many of those who sought to overcome hurdles within the period. Future generations have been buffeted by the success of these pioneers. I stand on their shoulders proudly. Persons obviously like Baroness Scotland, and if I dare say, my friend Gabriel Christian, certainly one of the leaders of his generation, Dominican and West Indian. We aspire to be part of a process, a growth of consciousness, where success is defined not by pigmentation but by production, not by amnesia but by ability. We aspire to gain recognition for our significant accomplishments on the land, on the air, on the sea, and of course on the playground. We also aspire to ensure that the accomplishments of our heroes are not written in water, but live on through the written word and through gatherings such as this. I congratulate all the veterans, all the honorees, the organizers of this event. A special congratulations to the Trinidadian ambassador, who Gabriel has spoken very highly of, and certainly of the tremendous help she's given in organizing this function. I also thank and commend the folks at the Andrews Air Force Base for making this event possible. I thank you.
Son of Mr. Wendell Christian, who served in the South Carolina Forces, is present with us today. He's a judicial commissioner in Maryland, and he's going to present citations and do a presentation as well to the airline. Mr. Christian.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Acting Prime Minister, and Chief Justice, high officials of the Trinidad and Tobago military, beloved family of our friend, as Mr. Julian would say, and I agree, our hero, Squadron leader, Ulric. I have a few citations to make, but I would like to share a few things. In 2007, as a trial lawyer, I took some time off along with Judge Andre to record the history of the British West Indians who served in the British Army, like my father, the Royal Air Force, like Judge Cross, and the Royal Navy. We thought that as a Caribbean people, we had a cultural deficit. A cultural deficit to the extent that we did not do enough to honor those who had served their country in the war and after the war. That in fact, it was a civic duty to make sure that those who have served our societies well are given their flowers before they die. And so on June 19th, 2009, we invited that last contingent of those who braced themselves to their duties when war came in 1939. What happened was, however, I had no idea up till 2008 that there existed an Ulric Cross, although I considered myself a learned West Indian. A lady from Trinidad by the name of Joy Floyd had some legal matters to attend to. As a trial lawyer, she came to my office, and I said when I was done, and I successfully dispatched her matter, you know, what are we doing? We are doing this book for King and Country, and I came across this gentleman, Ulric Cross, and he must be dead by now, because I never heard anything about all the great work he'd done. And she said, Ulric Cross, you mean Judge Cross? Yes. He's not dead, he's alive in Port of Spain. Within an hour, I was on the phone with the gentleman, and the rest is history. We were off and running. As he would say, because he was a man of great humor, charm, and grace, news of my death was highly exaggerated. He came to Washington, and on that beautiful summer morning, we were given a tour of the White House by Admiral Rochon, the first African-American to be director of the White House. And when he came out of the front portico of the White House, as many of you know from the movies or documentaries, there are always hundreds, sometimes thousands of tourists thronging the entrance. This son of Trinidad and Tobago, this St. Mary's College cadet, this hero of our Caribbean, was mobbed. He had taken the city by storm. He, in the words of the Attorney General of England, Baroness Scotland, Bashful, who addressed us that evening, he was dashing. He was debonair. He had skill. He had style. And with a certain degree of modesty, that reluctant hero once told me, after having accomplished the mission over Berlin, where he, of course, led 25 missions as a bombardier navigator in 139 Squadron Bomber Command. His plane, his Mosquito, was shot up over Berlin, and we were coming back to base, and he was told to get us to the closest base, and he chose a base called Swanton Morley. And on approach to the base, engines cut off, and the plane crashed. I said, Judge Carlson, are you afraid? He said, I wasn't afraid, you know, in that usual, very casual way of his. And he was hospitalized in the evening, and the next day, the RAF sent the plane to bring him back to his base. He said, Christian, when the plane crashed, I wasn't afraid. But when I overlooked the crash the following morning, and I saw scattered among the trees the remains of my aircraft, then I was afraid.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with a sense of gratitude and pride that we have come together to pay tribute to and celebrate the achievements of 4 of our Caribbean World War II heroes. Therefore, as Trinidad and Tobago's ambassador to the United States, and on behalf of the government and people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I extend warm greetings to Squadron leader and former Justice of Appeal of Trinidad and Tobago, Philip Louis Ulric Cross, DFCDSO.
Again, in part from the Lieutenant Governor, Anthony Brown, from the state of Maryland. Many years ago, you answered the call of duty by joining the Royal Air Force to fight tyranny during World War II and led 80 missions over occupied Europe and Germany. This demonstrated your commitment to your country and fellow airmen. Moreover, I commend you for your continued service to the community as judge and later as ambassador on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago to Germany and France. And again, this is written by Anthony Brown, who's our Lieutenant Governor in the state of Maryland, and also, of course, of Caribbean descent. We also have an official governor's citation and also a citation from the Maryland General Assembly.
You will always be a source of strength, for which we will forever be grateful. We thank him for his contribution, and we will continue to strive to develop and emulate his achievements. I recall one conversation I had with him, including one of which we spoke of legacies and life purpose. He said to me, to Captain Tyree, the purpose of a human being and the best legacy a human being can leave, and that of leadership, is to have earned the respect of one's subordinates, peers, and superiors, and more so of those persons who may never have met you or known you. With respect to Ulric Cross, I leave us this morning to determine his legacy and if he achieved that. I also owe to him one of my moments of instant stardom and celebrity status in the UK. In July 2011, I was attending a conference and I was staying at the Royal Air Force Officers Club in Piccadilly. The first morning I went out for breakfast. I was the first person there, so I sat at any table. The next person to come down for breakfast happened to be a retired Air Commodore who served as the last Air Attaché to the dead Soviet Union. So obviously he joined me at the table. When he heard my accent, he said, "Are you from the Caribbean?" I said, "Yes." He then said, "More specifically, are you from Trinidad and Tobago?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you aware of Ulric Cross?" I then told him, "I know Ulric Cross," so I got tips. He said, "You know Ulric Cross?" I said, "Yes." And I went on to explain to him that just 6 weeks, a month or so earlier, because this was in July 2011, and we had been stationed after him on 8th of June, we had renamed the station. What transpired after that is for the next 5 days, I had people lining up to be my guests at breakfast and dinner. So I thank Ulric for that. To his family and loved ones, we pray for the members of the Air Guard and indeed the entire Defense Force, when they speak on behalf of the Chief of Defense Staff who are represented this morning. We pray that you will find the strength and faith that you need at this time, and that you be forever reassured that he was indeed a man of purpose, a man of substance, an honorable, distinguished, general, and humble human being. He, Ulric, Philip Louis Ulric Cross, was, and indeed to us remains, a true hero in every sense of the word. Thank you.
I can say very little more, save to say that Cy Grant epitomized what many people thought of Caribbean spirit. He had ingenuity, he had skill, he had style, and he was really debonair. And I think if you look at the gentlemen here, who may have aged slightly, but I don't think that you can hide the fact that they're all still handsome, debonair, and dashing. So I'm very, very proud indeed to have been able to not only come and give these awards, but actually bask in their presence, because they represent for all of us what we aspire to be. And if our generation and the next generation can be the beacon that these gentlemen have been to all of us, then I think we can truly say we may have made a little contribution to making sure humanity is what God intended it to be.
As a person in this room who knew Cy Grant better than anybody else, may I add one or two things. He met after the war, we met after the war. When he came back from his prison camp, he was released by the Russians. And we became firm friends, and we decided to do law together. We both called to the bar in England, the Middle Temple. When we left the final exam room, I looked at Cy, Cy looked at me, and I said, "Cy, never for the rest of my life will I ever do an exam." He said, "Me too." And we went to see the most stupid film we could find. I think it was called, the newspapers called it, Lust in the Dust. Cy and I took our final bar exam together. Cy has never entered a court in his life since then. He was extremely good looking, and I believe the aristocratic ladies in London called him the Deb's Delight. I wasn't so lucky.
Other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and I quote, "By 1941, Britain stood alone. Dunkirk had been a defeat for Britain, and Hitler had conquered all of Europe. The world was drowning in fascism, and America was not yet in the war. So I decided to do something about it and volunteered to fight in the area. End of quote. These are the words of a young Ulric Cross as he described why he volunteered in his early 20s to risk his life in the fight against racism and bigotry that had swept up a continent thousands of miles away. Those words started off a military career that would see young Ulric win many accolades and awards, which are testament to the hero that he is. But if you ask him, Squadron Leader Justice Philip Ulric Cross, ORTT, CM, DSO, DFC, if he was a hero, he didn't consider himself a hero.
No, just keep going.
If you ask him why he did what he did, his answer would have been simply and matter-of-factly, it needed to be done. And that encapsulates the man. He did what needed to be done. When asked by a reporter during an interview in 1999 whether he felt afraid during combat, Philip Louis Ulric Cross replied, "You cannot be trained not to be afraid, but trained to conquer fear. It comes from a belief that what you're doing is right and is worthwhile." End of quote. There is nothing that was more right and worthwhile than the path that Justice Cross chose to follow. He served not only his country but all of mankind with great distinction. He was the quintessential man of the world. He transcended international borders, escaping the cocoon of safe national service to excel in other lands. There is a term of art that is often used to describe a person of that caliber, depth and measure. He is called an internationalista. And that is an accolade that is in fact given to few. And Ulric Cross was
it's about time
an internationalista.
We realise that this is an international thing, that lots of people from the Caribbean contributed their time and money and their own lives in helping with the war. And it would be nice if somebody could sort of probably just step forward and say sorry for how some of the members have been treated over the years. You know, there was a lot of segregation and things that were just taken for normal. But looking back now, it would be nice, a nice way to say, you know, sorry. And I think if they did that, I think there would be a lot more people stepping forward into the forces, and they would break the stereotype and the stigma that they have attached to black people who join the forces.
Great that to be here today at this service, to be part of remembering that there were Caribbean armed forces, you know, members of the armed forces that came for both the First World War. My granduncle was in the First World War at the Battle of the Somme and in Palestine, but also in the Second World War. So it's absolutely fantastic to be here to march to represent all the other service personnel who came from the Caribbean and the West Indies to fight and contribute to the war effort.